If you've scrolled YouTube anime discourse in the last 72 hours, you've seen the same 3 comments on every Frieren edit. This is the first Isekai that doesn't treat its side characters like plot devices. I cried for 45 minutes during the funeral episode, and why does this 1,000-year-old elf make me feel more seen than every shonen protagonist combined? Frieren's second season, which premiered globally on streaming platforms 3 weeks ago, hasn't just dominated anime YouTube. It's rewritten the rulebook for what fantasy anime can be, and the discourse around it reveals a far more interesting shift in what audiences are craving than any of the season's actual plot twists. For the better part of 2 decades, Isekai has been dominated by power fantasy wish fulfillment. Average Joe gets transported to a fantasy world, gets a cheat ability, saves the world, gets a harem, and lives happily ever after. Even the so-called subversive Isekai of the mid-2010s kept that core power fantasy structure intact, just with a snarkier protagonist or a darker tone. Frieren didn't just tweak that formula, it threw the entire rulebook out the window, and its second season doubles down on that subversion in ways no one saw coming. The first season's core hook was its time skip. We follow Frieren, an elf mage who outlives her entire adventuring party, as she retraces their journey a decade after their victory over the Demon King. But the second season takes that core theme of grief and expands it to explore the quiet, unglamorous work of living with loss. The season's opening arc, which follows Frieren as she helps a small village prepare for a monster attack that she already knows will end in the death of a young villager, doesn't frame her knowledge as a cheat, it frames it as a curse. For the first time in anime history, we're seeing a protagonist who isn't fighting to change the future, but learning to carry the weight of a future she can't change. That's where the discourse around side characters comes in. For years, anime fans have complained that side characters in shonen and isekai are nothing more than plot devices, existing only to cheer on the protagonist or die to motivate their growth. Frieren's second season turns that trope on its head. Every side character, from the snarky dwarf warrior Aizen to the young human mage Fern, has their own fully realized arc, their own grief, their own desires that have nothing to do with Frieren's journey. The episode focusing entirely on Fern's struggle with her own mortality doesn't exist to make Frieren a better mentor. It exists to give Fern the agency and emotional depth that side characters in almost every other fantasy anime are denied. That's why the discourse around the season is so heated. For the first time, audiences are seeing a fantasy anime that doesn't center the protagonist's power fantasy, but centers the quiet, messy humanity of every character on screen. What's fascinating about the discourse is that it reveals a far more interesting shift in what anime audiences are craving. For years, the most popular anime on YouTube have been power fantasy shonen and isekai, focused on over-the-top action and wish fulfillment. But Frieren's second season is outperforming almost every shonen released this year in terms of YouTube views, edit count, and discourse volume, which suggests that audiences are tired of the same old power fantasy formula. They're craving anime that takes the fantasy genre seriously, that explores complex themes like grief, memory, and the passage of time without dumbing them down for a mass audience. Frieren isn't just a popular anime. It's a cultural signal that the anime industry can no longer rely on the same old isekai and shonen formulas to carry its biggest releases. If you loved this deep dive into why Frieren Season 2 is rewriting the anime rulebook, hit the like button and subscribe to Lizzie's Pillow for more deep dives into the anime discourse shaping the industry right now. Drop a comment below telling me what you think is the most underrated part of Frieren's second season so far, and I'll see you in the next video.